All right, that brings us to walk-ins, oral briefings. Tara? No?
No, I'm Melissa Gregoire, I'm not on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm
Gotcha.
sorry. I just
Well-
wanted to meet y'all in person.
The next item is enforcement orders. So, was there anything you wanted to discuss this evening, or?
It's not on the agenda, so.
Okay. Well, we're on the other business section of the agenda, so it's up to you.
I'm not prepared.
Okay,
to
sure.
discuss, but it does involve a previous enforcement order that I addressed with the commission that I didn't hear back from, but it sounds like it was decided in the 2 weeks ago in your meeting on the 11th.
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
Do we discuss it now? I'm not really sure. I don't want
Well,
to.
so for us, the matter's closed. We received your complaint. The complaint was investigated by
I
two-
don't, I understand, but you, on the 5th, personally, Mr. King, sent me an email asking me to be patient with you and to give you 2 weeks. And that was on the 5th or 6th, and on the 11th, you had a meeting, which I was unable to attend and uninvited to, that you discussed the situation, and in your email to me, you referenced an enforcement, another property, that there was.
Would you mind coming up to a microphone?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, you can't hear you.
I
Thank you
just
so
wasn't
much.
planning
No,
on
that's-
speaking.
no, that's
I
okay.
apologize.
I don't,
I'm Melissa Gregoire, 251 Mattapoisett Road
Mm-hmm.
in Rochester. You guys have all, well, maybe not Mr. Lima, and I'm not sure of your name. Greg LaCroix. Mr. Lawrence, Mr. King, Mr. Feniff, and you're new, I think, Mr. Lima and Mrs. DaCosta. You're all familiar with me. I addressed an issue that I had with further clearing beyond what you guys, I guess, gave a negative determination on a property that I bought. And I believe that further clearing has been done to said property. And when I sent you several messages about said further clearing, you asked me to give you a couple of weeks for that to be decided. That was on the
Sure.
5th or 6th, and I said, I understand you're all volunteer, and I would give you said time.
Well, what we did was, because going back to the original complaint, it's almost 3 years ago now, Mr. Faniff having joined us, just coming up on a 1-year anniversary, I think.
You can
No,
sit down,
that's
you
till
don't have to
September.
Oh,
stand.
I like
Okay,
standing, I've been,
September.
thank you though.
So, Mr. Faniff, Mr. LaCroix, and Mr. Francis all conducted an on-site investigation, and they presented their findings. As a matter of rule or course or precedent, we don't normally invite the complainant when a complaint has been made
Okay,
to
that's
come
fine.
back. The complaint's made, it's registered, it's investigated and followed up on. I believe you had a couple of conversations with Mr. Francis,
I
from what I'm
did, and
aware
he
of.
asked me to speak to Mr. Faniff, who
And I-
in turn, you sent me a message and said, you, Mr. King,
Mm-hmm.
told me to give you 2 weeks for some professional
When I say
investigation on the situation,
give
at least 2
Me,
weeks.
what I mean is
I
us.
agree.
I speak for the
Yes.
ubiquitous we, which
Okay.
is the
You,
commission.
Mr.
Yeah.
Lawrence, I don't know if at the time, Mr. Chappie was involved, or
No,
Mr.
Chappie had-
Francis. Yeah, I don't think
resigned.
Chappie had resigned, I think he had resigned at that
Yep.
point. However, I presented some pretty, what I think is significant proof, since the applicant for the initial NOI, then when I filed, Mr. Lima, I'm sorry, you're not familiar, and Mr. Faniff, you guys are both kind of coming in late on the scene. But there was an initial NOI filed for a clearing that I thought was quite extreme for the small lot, that the ocean is coming into his lot
The
as
NOI
we
was
speak.
withdrawn without prejudice.
Exactly.
At an
And then
on-site.
he filed a second NOI, correct?
No, he filed
On
an
September, an
RDA.
RDA. Well, I'm not familiar with the terminology because I'm a citizen, right? But what you approved with a negative determination, and you were here and he was here, and I believe you were here, was for maintaining the existing lawn, which you yourself said was about 6 feet wide. I have
there's a-
photos
There's a
from.
plan that's on file with the town of Mattapoisett,
Yes,
and that's a
yeah.
matter of public record.
Exactly, that's why I'm bringing it up. Because on that NOI filing, RDA, whatever you wanna call it, there was no clearing to the beach. He said it was about 6 feet wide. There was no clearing amongst the posts. I could care less about a fire ring being there. I'm not concerned about the fire ring. What I am concerned about is the clearing. My property to the beach, it's his property, separates the ocean coming to swallow my property and everyone else's down there, right? And so you first of all approved something that I agree, he dropped it, the state got out of the situation, and then he filed the second one, which was the RDA, as you say it. I don't even know what that means.
Request for
Determination of
applicability.
applicability, which is, I believe, seeing if the Wetlands Protection Act applies to the site itself, which it does.
To the activity that was presented.
Right,
for
and the
site.
activity that was presented by Mr. Davignon was to maintain the existing path that was historically there. I presented in the last month or two that that has been significantly increased and that there was a fire area, which again, could care less about the fire ring, but the fact that around the area of the post was cleared to place the fire ring is the concern of mine. You didn't address the clearing that I was concerned of. You didn't address the fact that Mr. Lawrence specified it's about, he put his arms out about a 6 foot wide path. I got married down there September of 2020. I have pictures of us standing, you know, four people wide. And I have significant hardwood shrubs. I don't know what they're called. I was told maybe marsh elder, right? And since that time, I presented you with pictures of 3-inch cuttings of hardwood shrubs and clearing of that area. And instead of you guys coming to me and asking me, please show me what you're concerned about, you, Mr. King, asked me to wait 2 weeks for you to get professionals to look at it. And then you said, to Mr. Clapp's credit, he was the only one that filed for an RDA. Or you said filed for permits. I'm not sure exactly how you
Permits.
worded
That's
it.
exactly right.
But when he filed the second permit that I didn't argue, I did slightly debate the issue of the porta-john. And then when we discussed the fact that his brother was autistic and might have some difficulty with marine toilet or whatever, I said, you're right, he would, and I acquiesced to the porta-john. I just requested that maybe it might be a little bit scenic to the area as much as a porta-john can be. And that's how I left it. That was September 27th. In March, clearing happened, and I presented you photos with previous to the clearing and since the clearing.
So the photos are not representative of the actual activity that's occurred because of seasonal variations in vegetation.
I go there every 2 or 3 days, all winter long. I fill a bird feeder. I'm down there as well as many other people, right? Mm-hmm. And
You can drive down Mattapoisett Neck Road.
yes.
And if you look after you pass the town landing at the marsh on either side of the road.
Mr. King, please don't insult me.
I'm not
and
trying to
act
insult
like
you.
I don't know what's happened down there. Are you
I'm not
accusing
insulting
me
you.
of
What I'm-
lying and implying
I'm not
that
accusing you
Mr.
of
Clapp,
anything. What I'm trying to point out to you is that vegetation that during the summer, June, July,
yes,
August,
again,
is
you're
upright,
insulting me to
vibrant,
think
and
that I
green.
haven't been watching that vegetation for the last
not.
how many years? I've owned the property since I believe 2014. My father owned the property before that, and then my aunt and uncle owned the property before that. And I've been going down there since my children are gonna be 26 and 22. And I raised them down there. I have photos going back beyond that because my father owned it and my aunt and uncle owned it beyond that. There was no clearing ever in history until this previous clearing around those rings of the posts. I don't care that the fire stones were put there. I care that it was cleared for fire stones to put there. I don't care that there is, like, I do care because there was a 6-foot path about the width that you could park a car there. Not going to the posts, right? Like, look at Mr. Davignon's plans that he presented to this commission on September 27th, and it's colored in green very specifically, and I sent you that email. I said, look back at that meeting, right? And there was no clearing to the beach. There was no clearing around the rings. When his own NOI was presented, or RDA was presented to you guys. But my point is that you sent me a message and told me to wait 2 weeks on April 5th or 6th, and on April 11th, you attended a meeting here that you, and in that email, you said to me, the point
of the 2 weeks. The 2 weeks, the point of the 2 weeks was to allow professional staff.
Which you said in the meeting that he.
By the town of Mattapoisett, the town administrator authorized budget for their time down there.
You're referring to them
Mr.
as
Fanoff,
in the agent and his.
They are the agent of the commission.
Yep.
They're the ones that serve us.
And you said you would get back, you said you would get back to me. And you said that there was
Mr.
another enforcement order that had come to your attention and that
That's
you were
correct.
going to address, right?
Yes.
Come to find out, I later watched the video on April 11th, and the other enforcement order involved my property.
Correct. Not your property, someone else's property
No,
that
it
you
involved
bought.
my self-clearing of someone else's property.
That is correct.
So, from April 11th until today, I've been in touch with Mr. Fanoff. He didn't get in touch with me, and to be honest, we spoke today. But I didn't hear back from anybody. I coincidentally, because Mr. Francis said you should attend the meeting on April 11th. But that was before Mr. King contacted me and said, give me a couple of weeks. When Mr. King sent me an email about a possible enforcement issue beyond Mr. Clapp's property, he didn't say it was my property. He just said there was another potential enforcement that might happen, right? So from then until today, I heard nothing from Mr. King. I heard nothing from the commission. And no offense, Mr. Fanoff, but I heard nothing from you until I contacted you today. And then today, I receive a cease and desist order. So my concern is that on April 11th, the meeting that you last had, do you know who brought up the enforcement, the complaint against me and the back clearing of my property? It was William Clapp.
No, ma'am.
It was, and I can play you the video.
It was the Van Stones.
No,
made
Mr.
the
Clapp
original
brought it up in the
complaint.
meeting. So how did Mr. Clapp know about the complaint against me before I knew?
He's been in
about the
contact with the
complaint?
Van Stones.
I've been in contact with the Van Stones, and they did not file a complaint. They were feeling like they were going to be in trouble for the area that was cleared because Mr. Clapp contacted them. So, is there some reason that I went from asking you to enforce something and then to me receiving a cease and desist order today with no communication between those two time periods? No, I'm looking at you, Mr. King. I'm asking you.
Oh, sure. Well,
Yeah.
I would defer to.
No, I'm
Mr.
asking you
Faniff.
because you emailed me. You emailed me, and you told
I
me
res-
to wait, and you told me
I
that there was
responded to
another
your
complaint. You told
multiple
me
emails
yes,
and
there
phone
were
calls
multiple
to the
emails
office
phone
and
calls.
staff.
Correct. Exactly.
Which then had compelled the town to have to pay Mr. Faniff and Mr. LaCroix
Not that mine. Thank you. I don't use plastic.
to go down and inspect the site,
Yeah.
at which time it was determined that activities had occurred beyond your property.
That's fine.
And on
I'm
someone
not
else's
speaking of
property.
my property. I'm speaking of why I was not informed between my complaint. I did not receive any communication from
When you
you.
filed a DEP appeal.
That
and-
was on a previous NOI.
Right, but you
Yes.
did not appear at the DEP onsite.
I was not informed to appeal at the DEP onsite. You didn't ask for me
Every-
to show up. The state
It's
didn't
not up
ask for me
to
to
us
show
to
up.
notify you
How would
about
I
that, the
know?
state. The state.
Well, the state didn't inform me, and I don't really, that's null and void, because since then, he filed a second NOI,
An RDA.
which RDA. What, can I ask what the difference is between an NOI and an RDA? Notification of
Notice of
intent and
intent.
a request for determination of action,
Applicability.
applicability. What is the difference between the two?
Shelley?
Yeah,
You can use an RDA for a number of purposes. Determining jurisdiction, whether or not the Wetlands Protection Act applies to
Which is-
what you're doing or your property. Verifying wetland boundaries, so whether or not a bylaw applies in your case. There's probably one or two other things. This is just rattling off the top of my head. The thing that the RDA is used for the most is whether or not the work that is proposed is in jurisdiction and can be permitted, right? So, for relatively insignificant work, let's just call it, let's just label it like that. A lot of work, especially if it's more than 50 feet away from a wetland, it can be permitted through the RDA process, because it's minor stuff.
This is.
just like this evening.
This is.
The first
the
item's an
ocean
RDA
comes.
for the Mattapoisett Land Trust. They're putting in 80 feet of
Right.
log boards.
Minor,
The
yeah,
next one was an RDA, that's for an addition on a house in the flood zone.
right. So
The next
there
one's
are,
an RDA for the campsite.
there are cases where you can be in a resource area and have that apply.
Geez.
But the commission could also say, no, this is significant, you need to file a notice of intent, which is a much more intensive process. You normally have to get your land surveyed, you have to create a site plan, you have to hire a civil engineer to show what you want to do. So you go through all that process, then you have to fill out the application form, which is a 12-page long form, it's not easy. You have to notify all the abutters. And
I
then you
mean,
have
I
to-
believe I've
then-
received said on
then
the
you have-
initial NOI filing, correct?
Then you have to put a legal ad in the local newspaper, then you have to have a public hearing. So with an RDA, you don't have to do a lot of that. Right, so that's the difference
Okay.
between the two.
One of the other things Mr. King mentioned in the email that he sent to me was that other abutters had filed appropriate RDAs or paperwork filing with you guys for their property. And when I asked him, responded, please let me know if there's something I was supposed to have done. I've received, it's been radio silence.
It's not for me to decide.
Well,
what-
you said to me
Please,
in my
please,
email.
please,
Yes, I pause.
thank you.
Yes.
Press pause. Good
Pause.
idea. The idea is to get the outcome you're looking for. 3 years ago was when this first reared its ugly head, when someone made a complaint against someone mowing down there. And that's when we all on this commission became aware it was there. That was when Elizabeth Leidhold was still the agent.
Right.
At that time, everyone was put on notice that the activities that were being conducted down there were being done so without proper permits. Some of that activity predates the Wetlands Protection Act, but any of it that's occurring now is subject to the jurisdiction of the Wetlands Protection Act.
Correct.
Ms. Leidhold contacted each of the property owners then on behalf of the commission and advised everyone that they needed to file permits for what they were doing down there. There was some discussion, from what I understand, as a group, that you were gonna do something together. However, my understanding is those discussions broke down. Mr. Clapp was the only one who moved forward and made a presentation.
And I hit pause.
First as an NOI, which was rejected, because DEP was down there and said, nope, can't do that.
It's a dune, so he
It was
couldn't do it.
resubmitted as an RDA.
You guys approved it though, initially. Yes, you
We
approved his cutting.
a negative determination for him to have a 30-foot RV or 2 cars, 2 8x8 tent sites,
We
2 picnic tables,
Approved the
and a
NO
fire
we
pit.
approved
That's
the
what
NO
you approved
We approved
initially.
the NOI as it was presented to us.
Yes.
Based on the
The
information
clearing of
supplied to us.
Phragmite that was, and
from
I argued
LEC
it.
From
Yes,
LEC
I agree.
Environmental,
Yes.
a licensed
I
professional.
totally agree that
And Schneider, DeVignan and
Yes.
Leone, a licensed engineering firm in the
Yes.
town of Mattapoisett.
that is true.
The circuit rider for DEP attended the
I'm not sure
on-site-
what a circuit rider is.
I'm not either, but that's his title. It's called the circuit rider.
Is,
And
so, it's
upon-
like Nate Cochran from DEP, like a site inspector?
There were
No.
two folks from DEP that day.
Yes, a circuit rider is an educator. They go
They
around.
educate
They
the
educate
commission?
The commissions, yes.
Okay.
Often you can call them up with questions, and they also
You
put on.
being the commission can call for questions.
I could call. They could call.
I could call if I knew what
You
a
could
circuit
call them and
rider
get a
is.
circuit rider
Yeah.
as well. Yes. Yeah. They're educators.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the time, at the on-site, they withdrew the NOI without prejudice, which is their legal right to do at that time. That was it. The next item that came before us down on that property was the land trust for the David Mort Memorial Bench. We approved that under an RDA filing, which we feel was appropriate. Mr. Clapp's RDA came in also. We approved that based on what we saw. Following your complaint, an investigation was done, and the results of that investigation were that there wasn't an issue. As I understand, it was presented to us at that meeting that it wasn't an issue. Our agendas are published 2 days before every meeting. Anybody can see what's on the agenda. I will look at my emails and follow through on the chain, but I'm sorry if I failed to notify you. I thought that you would be
Mr. Clapp, sorry, Mr.
following
King.
the process.
I have a life as you do. You asked me to be patient with you because you're a volunteer. And you said, be patient. We're volunteers. We need time. We need to look into this, right? 5 days later, you sat at that seat that you're sitting in right now and made a decision on what you told me 5 days before to give you 2 weeks to decide, right?
I don't know that the timing
Well,
of that
I
is-
have the email from you, and I'm not
Can
gonna.
I chime in here for a minute, Mr. Chairman? I just want to say, I did invite you to the meeting several times, correct? I told you we would
Well,
be discussing this.
no, you
and I
did.
and-
Is
and
this
while I
Trevor?
did miss that meeting,
Yes,
due
it's
to
Mr.
work,
Francis.
I did invite you several times to that meeting.
You told me to attend the meeting a couple of times, it's true. And then Mr. King sent me an email, and he's a chairman, and he asked me to give him a couple of weeks, which I did. And then I tried to attend the meeting, and to be honest, I'm a pediatric nurse, and I tried to get out. I worked 12-hour shifts, and I tried to get out in time to attend a meeting that I was told by Mr. King 5 days before to give him 2 weeks. I still thought I should attend the meeting. and I wasn't able to, unfortunately.
It wouldn't have changed the outcome if you did.
No,
what
I
you did.
agree.
All right,
But
so-
what my concern is that there, at the time, Mr. King sent me an email asking me to give him a couple weeks. He said there was some accusation of further issues that may require enforcement orders.
Correct.
He did not say my property.
I had no idea what was any
So
property
so-
until such time as we authorized the agent to go down there
So-
and conduct the inspections. Those are not
So
done.
you're telling
by
me
the
that you
commissioners.
knew nothing about the clearing in the back of my property until Mr. Faniff went down there? That's what you're telling me?
No, we had a complaint probably, I don't know, it's about a year.
October.
A year.
Yeah,
October.
it was in
So the
October.
Van Stones, I don't know if you call it a complaint, but it was a letter of concern.
Okay.
It was signed by, it was an email, so there were 3 or 4 Van Stone names on it.
Yeah.
So the commission knew about it, I knew about it. So it's not like it was new news.
No,
It was new news to me, and I'm the property owner that's being accused of clearing an area that I've been clearing since I own the property, since.
Look how
but
long
you
you've
were
been
also
breaking the law.
notified 3
I-
years
You're
ago.
clearing somebody else's property.
And
That's why you got it. And I'm not
I
trying to argue
understand
with you.
that, but shouldn't I have been notified and given the opportunity to discuss that?
Well, you opened up a can of worms that made us have to hire a guy to go and
So
check
in
out
other
everybody's
words-
property down there. So now everybody's property down there is going to
So
be held
because-
responsible.
Yes,
every
and they
campground
should
down
be.
there.
Isn't that what your job is?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
No, yeah, but you know
So hold
something?
me responsible.
I volunteered for this job.
I know, and I don't want to. I'm not trying to. I would love to volunteer and help you. I wish that I could assist you
From the
in
wrong
what
town,
you're
but-
doing. I'm not a Mattapoisett resident, and I don't think that you guys would welcome me on the commission at this point.
That's not true.
Well,
Well, you have to be a resident.
I know.
I'm not a resident.
But,
I'm a property owner.
I would just suggest that 3 years ago, this was brought to the fore. 3 years
It's
ago.
not been 3 years.
Three-
It
it's-
hasn't
it's
been.
about-
It was July of
All right, yeah.
2021.
It was pre-COVID, I'll leave it at that.
It was mid-COVID.
No, it was
It was COVID
when the
that
original
started. If
complaint
you
was
want to
made
argue when
against
COVID started,
Mr.
and
Clapp. I think
I
we
have the
can,
letters upstairs.
yes, perfect, great.
I mean, is it worth arguing when it
No,
came
it's
up?
not worth
None of it's not worth
not.
arguing any of. What I suggest you do, though, is take a look at the information that was sent to you,
I have.
respond accordingly.
I have, and I haven't seen a result. I have seen you guys, instead of looking at the clearing that I'm concerned about, you guys in turn, instead of notifying me in person about what you were concerned about me clearing, which was just a mention by a woman who hasn't been up here in decades, that, oh, I was afraid I was going to get in trouble for clearing my spot, and I just said it wasn't me that cleared it. That's what Marion Vanstone told me. I never filed a complaint against you. I just was afraid that I was going to get in trouble for clearing salt marsh. So I said it wasn't me, it must be the abutters, right? I mowed that since I showed up on the plot. I just kept mowing what was always there. So instead of you saying to me, gee, we notice that you potentially have been mowing beyond your property boundaries, and it kind of is concerning to us, and we'd like to address that. You went from 0 to 60 and sent me a cease and desist order that arrived today. Today by certified mail. And I don't even know what that means, because I can't contact anyone in the Conservation Commission because there's never anyone here. And I understand you guys, I know what you're going through. And I've tried to be patient.
I think
But
you were on the phone today with Mr. Fana for
I was.
well over an hour on 2 different phone
it
calls.
wasn't over an hour, actually.
Between the 2
And
phone calls. Well, he has to keep track of his hours, so we'll find out. You know,
well, okay,
I'll
I
just-
don't want to debate
the
who
meter-
owes who what for
The
what.
meter is running though, and at this point, the town of Mattapoisett's footing the bill for it. But
Would you like me to
yeah,
walk away?
No, I just want you to be in compliance. I want everybody down there to be in compliance because you were all notified.
What are you asking me to do?
Over 2 years ago,
To what?
be in compliance.
I've
There are
been,
two options, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
First option is to comply with the cease and desist order and just stop mowing across the property line, right? So the second option
absolutely.
is to tell the commission that you're wrong, that I am doing this lawfully, and here's why. And what you would have to research and prove to the commission is that the Vanstone property has been mowed and maintained in its current state since at least 1972.
That's a little bit challenging to provide that. Yeah, I am perfectly willing to stop mowing the back of my property. That is not the issue that has brought me here to observe Conservation Commission meetings. The issue is that I brought issue of clearing of a property that was involved in an NOI, which received a negative determination, that was involved in a request for superseding order of conditions that then was dropped, that had an RDA filed, that was approved with a -3 determination, which then you said, no, it's -2. I don't even know what that means, or vice versa. And that was allowed to maintain the existing lawn area that has been mowed. And if you want to question, I can't wait till the next Google Earth video comes up, or the next Google Earth satellite photo, to prove that the path that has been there since at least,
We have satellite images
Yes.
available to us through the town assessor's office under the Near Maps program
right.
for flybys every 6 months going back
So
6 years.
let's go. Let's
We've
let's
already-
do one now and show the collapsed property cleared.
already-
I can show you pictures right now of what you call an established lawn that's this high of Phragmites. I can show you fresh cuttings of whatever hardwood shrubs were there that are inches in diameter and has not been addressed by this commission. I will stop mowing the back of my property. That is not my concern.
So here's part of the problem, is that nobody knows these properties better than Mrs. Gregoire and probably Mr. Clapp, right?
Not Mr. Clapp, because he showed up since COVID.
Okay, so Mrs.
Another
Gregoire
property owner
knows these
believed.
properties intimately. What Miss Gregoire, Mrs.
Mrs.
Thank you, Mrs. Gregoire is complaining about, it has to do with feet of additional clearing, right, on either side, right?
And back and a clearing to the beach, yes.
No one else here has that kind of intimate history to know exactly within feet where that line is. And when I visited, when Greg visited, when Trevor visited it, Trevor has more experience down there than I do, and so I have no history with the site. So when I looked at it, it looked pretty much like it was supposed to, right? But I have limited history. In the end, the commission, 5-member, I think at the time 4-member, volunteer board decided that no further action was required, and the issue was then closed.
Right, because the testimony from Mr. Clapp was that he did not build the fire pit, somebody else built the fire
Right,
pit.
and
That's
that, and maybe it was
And there
there
was
an additional
something
foot or
with the
two on
lot
either side.
being
cut, right?
damaged and,
Yeah,
you know,
whatever was done down there, if it was anything really, it was de minimis in the commission's eye and did not merit further enforcement action.
correct.
And that was the end of it. And it's still the end of it. Now we get into the law part of it. And Mrs. Gregoire is upset that she was not notified. Now, it was in this process with the complaints, was Mrs. Gregoire required to be notified of anything? And the answer is no. Now, should she, was it a faux pas to write an email saying we'll get in touch with you, in 2 weeks to do everything? Maybe, was it neighborly? Not, maybe not necessarily so, but the commission is confined by the law. And the law, as I understand it, is she was not required to be notified. I mean, the actions took place, and we're here where we are.
It was also asserted that the complaint was forwarded to DEP as well, so. at
That's
that
right, and
point-
if DEP wants to take action, they will take action.
Mhm.
And that's that.
And it's out of our hands.
If the DEP is even gonna do anything with it.
Mhm.
What I said was I had spoken to the DEP, but I haven't given details because I was hoping to keep this a town situation. I was hoping to not put you guys in a situation, I don't even know what the DEP holds over you or if they have control over you or anything, but I
No,
really
it's either-
didn't wanna
Well, they
stir up
step in
trouble
and-
with your
Yes and no.
commission.
They take over and.
So DEP is actually in charge of everything. However, the way, there's a constitutional amendment to Massachusetts Constitution called Home Rule. Right, it keeps power decentralized, right? So what happens is there's a statewide Wetlands Protection Act, but each municipality is in charge of their own territory. So the Conservation Commission is called the quote-unquote issuing authority, right? So if the DEP decides that they want to step in and take over, they can. Otherwise, per the Home Rule Amendment, they stand back.
I understand all of that, but what was implied to be by Mr. Francis and Mr. King was that, like, well, you threw us under the bus. I mean, to be fair, Mr. Francis, you showed up at my husband's restaurant and looked for me and said, you threw the commission under the bus with the state. And I am not trying to.
No, stop, don't put words in my mouth. I never said that. Never
That was-
once did
Nor
that come
did
out of my
I.
mouth.
Said
So
nothing like
please
that.
don't start with that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, but
This sounds very
what value are we
volatile.
adding to the conversation?
Yeah,
at this
I
point?
really feel like we're not getting
I
anywhere.
would recommend cutting off discussion.
That's fine with me.
Mrs. Gregoire has she's been compelled to come to the May 25th hearing to talk about this issue more formally, and that's what I recommend.
Thank you, I agree.
I agree.
Okay, motions, discussions tabled until the next meeting.
Don't lose a 12-hour shift over it, though. I'm married to
I
a nurse, so
I can't, there's nobody to cover me. I really just came to introduce myself in human form. That's really, I did not come prepared to present anything or discuss anything. I just wanted to show my face to the people that I've been dealing with for, as you say, the last few years. That I just
I just
wanted-
recall that was when the original, situation came up
it
for the
was-
area,
It was
so.
not 3 years ago, but again, minutiae, it's pointless to debate that, but it's been a while. And I've put my trust in this commission, and I've tried to work with my town to deal with something without involving the state. I have done everything I can to make that area acceptable and presentable, and I've worked to make the land trust property usable for everyone. I would offer all of you here to come and sit by my campfire. I offered it to Mr. Clapp, but what I don't want to do is allow people to just clear cut an area to, I'm sorry, I guess it's the end of it. I'm sorry. I just wanted to meet you. That's all I wanted to do, meet you in person.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you on the 25th.